Have you ever stopped and wondered if there's more to life than just this complex dance of chemicals? I mean, what if there's a hidden layer, an entire electrical blueprint that's guiding our growth, our healing, and maybe even our connection to the world around us? Well, stick with me because we are about to explore the incredible, forgotten story of electricity in biology.
That's a pretty powerful statement, right? It's from Nobel Prize winner Albert St. Georgi. He had this deep suspicion that the purely chemical view of life just wasn't the whole story, that we were missing a fundamental piece of the puzzle. And honestly, this quote, it really sets the stage for our entire explainer, the hunt for that missing fact. So this is the central question. For centuries, science has been working to show that we're basically just incredibly sophisticated machines, fully explainable by the laws of physics and chemistry. But does that story really hold up? This has been one of the longest and frankly most intense debates in all of science.
And this slide really breaks that conflict down for us. On one side, you've got mechanism, the idea that we're machines. This pretty much became the dominant view in modern biology. And on the other side, vitalism, which is this ancient belief in some kind of special life force. And for one brief, absolutely fascinating moment in history, it looks like electricity might just be the scientific proof of that life force. So let's turn to chapter 1 in this story and see exactly how this all kicked off. It starts back in the 1700s with a simple, but, well, a world-changing observation involving a pair of frog legs. Okay, so here's how it went down. Luigi Galvani sees that frog legs twitch when they're touched by two different metals. He's amazed. He calls it animal electricity, and he thinks he's found the vital spark of life itself. But then Alessandro Volta comes along and says, hold on, no, the electricity is just a chemical reaction between the metals. It has nothing to do with the animal. And to prove it, he invents the battery. His view wins the day. Then, decades later, the Bernstein hypothesis seemed to just seal the deal. It explained the nerve impulse as a purely chemical thing, just ions moving across a membrane. And just like that, electricity in biology was dismissed as a ghost, a mere side effect. And the consequence of this was huge. I mean, because it got tangled up with this unscientific idea of vitalism, the entire field of bioelectricity was just pushed to the fringes of science. The search for a deeper electrical nature of life, it was basically abandoned by the mainstream for more than 100 years. But, of course, the story doesn't end there. Not even close. In the 20th century, a few researchers started finding these little clues that pointed to a completely different kind of electrical system in the body, one that had been totally overlooked. So check this out. It turns out our body is running two electrical systems. We all know about the nerve impulse, right? The fast, digital system for sending messages. But there's also a slower, analog system of steady, direct currents. And this forgotten circuit, it doesn't just send information. It seems to control the most fundamental processes of life itself, our ability to heal, to grow, and to regenerate. Just think about this for a second. It's kind of mind-blowing. A salamander can lose an entire leg. I'm talking bone, muscle, nerves, skin, the whole thing. And it can grow a perfect replacement. How on earth is that possible? A purely chemical model really struggles to explain how the body knows what to build, and maybe more importantly, when to stop. The answer, it turns out, is electric. When that salamander's limb is cut, the body generates a very specific DC electrical signal right at the wound. And this isn't just a side effect of the injury. It's the master signal. It's the command that tells the cells to kickstart this incredible process of rebuilding a complex, perfectly formed limb from scratch. And hey, this isn't just some weird thing for salamanders. We see it happening in our own bodies. Wolff's Law describes how our bones get stronger when we put them under stress. So, how does that work? Well, the crystals in our bones are piezoelectric. It's a fascinating property. It just means they generate a tiny electrical signal when they're squeezed. That signal then tells our bone cells, hey, build more bone right here where we need it. It's a perfect little feedback loop, and it's all controlled by electricity. Okay, so let's zoom out, way out. Because this electrical system, it doesn't just operate inside our bodies. It actually seems to connect us to the planet itself. This is one of those points that is so obvious, we almost always forget it. For billions of years, every single living thing on this planet has developed, grown, and evolved, all while bathed in the subtle electromagnetic fields of the Earth. It would almost be weirder if life hadn't learned to use it somehow. And we see proof of this all across the animal kingdom. I mean, from the absolutely incredible 11,000-mile journey of the Arctic Tern, to a homing pigeon that can find its way home even when the sun is completely hidden by clouds. These creatures are tapping into the Earth's magnetic field like it's a built-in map and compass.
And this isn't just speculation. Back in 1971, a brilliant experiment by a guy named William Keaton proved it. He attached these tiny magnets to homing pigeons. Now, on sunny days, it didn't really matter. They could just use the sun to navigate. But on cloudy days, the pigeons with the magnets got totally lost, while the other pigeons found their way home perfectly. They were using a magnetic sense. It was real.
So this all brings us right up to the present day, and it leads to a really important modern question. What happens when we fundamentally change the electrical environment that life has been fine-tuning itself to for billions of years? You know, over the last century, we've just flooded our world with artificial electromagnetic fields, or EMFs, from power lines, radio, Wi-Fi, you name it. The electrical environment we live in now is, well, it's wildly different from the one in which we evolved. So you have to ask, what are the potential consequences? A really useful way to frame this, which is proposed by the source material, is to think of EMFs not as some kind of poison, but as a stressor. Just like prolonged heat, or cold, or even trauma, these fields might be able to trigger the body's adaptive stress response. The question then becomes, what happens when we're under chronic long-term exposure to this totally new kind of stress?
Now, for a concrete example, let's look at some data from studies on workers who've had long-term, high-level occupational exposure. The sources document a clinical syndrome that seems to progress through stages. It starts with things like changes in blood pressure and heart rate, but it can apparently move toward more serious instability in the nervous and hormone systems. This is just presented as a documented observation of a biological response. Some epidemiological studies have looked for links in the general population, too. For instance, one notable study in Denver reported that the death rate from childhood cancer was about twice the expected rate in homes that were classified as having high current wiring configurations. Now, it's really important to note that this is a super complex area of research, and other studies, like one done in Rhode Island, didn't find that same association. But, and this is a huge but, this story is not just about risk, not by a long shot. It's also about incredible potential. We've really come full circle here. By understanding the body's natural electrical systems, doctors are now using small, targeted electrical currents to successfully heal bone fractures that have just refused to mend on their own, tapping into that exact same regenerative signal we saw with Wolff's Law.
So, where does all this leave us? I mean, we've taken a journey from a simple twitching frog leg all the way to the incredibly complex electrical world of the 21st century. What this all means, really, is that we're seeing a massive shift in thinking. That purely chemical, mechanical view of life is being updated. We're rediscovering this hidden electrical layer, that forgotten circuit that looks more and more like a master control system for some of our most fundamental biological processes. And this leaves us with one final, profound question. For over 100 years, biology has focused almost exclusively on the chemical side of things. What new therapies, what new understanding of life itself, and what new sense of our place in the world might we gain now that we are finally learning how to read the body electric?